Hey y'all, and welcome to The Cutest Little Thing. My name is Andrea, and I'm so glad you are here today. I love all things thrifted, vintage, upcycled, and DIY'd, and here on my YouTube channel, you will find all of those things. I'm from southeastern North Carolina, and I have 2 vendor booths in my local small town where I sell my crafts and DIY home decor. And here I will share all of the video tutorials of those pieces. I'm super excited for today's project, so let's get started. This is a bundt pan I previously painted. I grabbed it back out of my stash. We're going to make it over today. I grabbed the color pumpkin in the Waverly and chestnut in the apple barrel mixed in my bowl. And I'm also adding a few drops of my coffee grunge. Yes, you can add that to your paint also. Get that mixed really well. I want more of a burnt orange for this project. After you're happy with that color, go ahead and get that first coat of paint on your bundt pan. I love using kitchen items to upcycle into beautiful home decor pieces. After that first coat's good and dry, we're ready for our second coat. While that second coat of paint is still wet, you want to grab your ground cinnamon and sprinkle that all over your bundt pan. You can sprinkle in as much or as little as you would like, all depending on how grungy you want your pumpkin to look. Next, grab your heat tool and give that a good dry, drying that cinnamon right into that paint. After that's dry, grab your coffee podge as well as a sponge brush. All coffee podge is school glue mixed in with your coffee grunge mixture. If you don't have that coffee grunge mixed up, you could also just use plain Mod Podge or school glue mixed with a little bit of water. Use that sponge brush to dab on that coffee podge all over that dry cinnamon. You do want to work in sections because that coffee podge or Mod Podge will dry quickly. And while it's still wet, we're going to take our instant coffee grounds and sprinkle in that wet coffee podge. You can apply it as heavy or as light as you would like it. I do like to apply it a little heavier around the bottom edge, kind of like the pumpkin sitting in the dirt. While that coffee podge is still wet, it's also a good time to sprinkle in a little more cinnamon as well. Once you get your bundt pan completely covered, you want to take your heat tool and go over and dry it and melt those instant coffee grounds and that cinnamon in that Mod Podge. I did not get that part on camera. And once it's dry, we're ready for those embellishments. I have a stick from the yard I already pre-cut, and I glued some Spanish moss around that, as well as some paper strips just to use as a filler to fill some of the hole of our bundt pan. Those burlap leaves and little curlicue tendrils came from a flower arrangement that I already had. I cut those off and applied those. Here I'm adding some more Spanish moss over that to finish filling up around the stem. You could use any leaves that you already had on hand, or you could cut some out using some fabric or some burlap. Here I'm adding some little greenery pieces that come from my favorite garland from Hobby Lobby. Y'all know I use that quite a bit. And I'm just placing a dab of hot glue right on the ends and sticking those right down in that moss. You can also make your own curlicue tendrils with some floral wire and just wrap them around the end of a paintbrush and hot glue those down as well. These are some berries that I had from a flower pick, I think from Dollar Tree or either from Walmart. And I just like to cut my picks up and use them in different projects. I grabbed some burlap mesh ribbon that I get from Amazon, and I cut a shoestring bow with it and trimmed those tails the length that I like them and hot glued it right at the base of that stem. I took those ribbon tails and hot glued them and kind of placed them where I wanted them to lay so that they would stay, and just used a little dab of glue so it wouldn't show. And then I layered that burlap mesh bow with one of my little jute string shoestring bows. And y'all, this is just turning out so beautiful as is, but I thought it would be super cute if it had a little tray for it to sit on. So I grabbed a charger plate from my stash. You can get these at the Dollar Tree as well as Hobby Lobby. I took it outside just to save on some time. I had some black spray paint on hand, and I went ahead and spray painted this black. And this is the Rust-Oleum brand, but you could use any brand. You could also even hand paint your plate black if you don't have the spray paint on hand. And while that paint's still wet, just like usual, we have to add our cinnamon, y'all. I had it outside and ready to go. I took it back inside to my craft table, grabbed that coffee podge and that sponge brush, and dabbed it on all over that dry cinnamon the same way we did our bundt pan. Go all the way around that charger plate. You can also grab those instant coffee grounds and sprinkle in that coffee podge as well as any extra cinnamon that you would like to add. And here I am adding that. I love the look. Just the cinnamon looks beautiful, but I just love how it looks when you add those instant coffee grounds in. Sprinkle in a little more cinnamon, and then we are ready to dry this with our heat tool. And y'all, I know I say this all the time, but this is where the magic happens. When that heat is applied and that Mod Podge melts and those instant coffee grounds and cinnamon just kind of melt in. I did decide to go over that extra cinnamon I added with that coffee podge once again. And after I apply this, I'll go back over it with heat one last time. After that, our tray is complete and we are ready to get our pumpkin back on there and add some embellishments. I took a few pieces of some flower picks that I had as well as these little greenery picks, and I just kind of trimmed these to the length that I wanted them and decided to put them together and tie them with a piece of jute string. I also had some dried wheat I got from Amazon, and I added that to the little bundle also. I loved that texture and color that it brought. And I tied a little jute string tie to the front of that bundle. I found a little bag of acorns in my stash, so I decided to hot glue 3 of those at the base where I had that bow. I thought they looked really cute as a cluster. I laid that little arrangement right beside the pumpkin on the platter, and I thought that was so cute and that it completed our bundt pan project. And here it is, all staged up. Y'all, I love how this turned out. I hope you love it too. Let me know what you think. I think it's amazing that we took that plastic charger plate, and after that technique we did, it looks like an old rusty cast iron plate or tray. And I love how all the colors go together. It's definitely one of my favorite fall projects so far. I am so glad you're here today, and I hope you're enjoying today's video. If you are and you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll do that before you go. Hit that notification bell, choose all notifications so you don't miss a thing. All right, let's get back to the DIYs. I love these little decorative tin containers. I'll always pick them up when I see them at my local Goodwill. I think you can get them from your dollar stores as well. I grabbed Dixie Belle in the color burlap, and since we're going for a primitive look here, I grabbed my instant coffee grounds. I cleaned it up, took off that tag, and put on my first coat of paint. Once that first coat was completely dry, I went ahead and went in with a second coat just to be sure we had really good coverage over this tin. Next, I grabbed a cute label. This says Baker's Best Sugar, and I purchased it from Etsy. I applied Mod Podge to the back of the label and then placed it right onto the tin can, just being sure it's centered and lined up, and then press that down, being sure that Mod Podge underneath adheres to the can. Next, I grabbed a plate, put a little Mod Podge in that plate, as well as some cinnamon and some instant coffee grounds. I take my brush, I dip it into the Mod Podge, then I dip it into my cinnamon and instant coffee ground mixture, and I brush it over my tin can going in one direction, and just continue dipping your brush into your Mod Podge, then into your coffee and cinnamon mixture. Continue this process all the way around the can. You can also use school glue instead of Mod Podge, and you can add a little bit of water to your school glue if you'd like, not too much because we don't want it too watery. Once I get back around to my label, and do the same technique around that label, and when you have a little bit left on your brush, lightly brush over your label because you want a little bit of that grubbiness over it as well, but not too much because you don't want to hide that detail and the wording there. And you can add as much or as little of the cinnamon mixture that you would like. And once you're satisfied with how much you've applied, grab your heat tool and give it a good dry. And this is where the magic happens, applying this heat. And this is also setting everything and helping it to cure. Once we got our can all situated, now it's time to do the lid. You can do the lid the same way you do the can, but I decided for these I wanted to change it up just a little bit. So I took some black chalk paint. This is the color Caviar in the Dixie Belle. And I applied 2 coats. After that was good and dry, I grabbed my Sweet Pickins beeswax in the color black. And I applied it all over the lid. This is sealing in our chalk paint. And while that's still wet, I grabbed that ground cinnamon once again and sprinkled that all into our wax. And again, you can sprinkle as much or as little as you would like, just all depending on the look that you like. And I just took my finger and kind of rubbed that in, that wax. And if you don't have wax on hand, you could do the same technique using some Mod Podge or school glue. And look at that look that we got. I love that black, and it just pops and brings out the black writing in our label. I didn't want to put it all the way on because our can's still curing, but I just wanted y'all to be able to see how beautiful it is. And this is another one I did the exact same way. I did that same technique, and it's just a little bit of a different label on that one. Next, I grabbed some black and cream Jubilee homespun fabric and tore me a strip and tied a simple shoestring bow. And I hot glued that right at the edge of that label. I thought that just added a cute little touch. And I love the colors. I added a bow on the other can as well. And I grabbed some Sweet Annie to place right underneath those loops of the bow. I just added a little bit of hot glue right on the edge of that stem and nestled it in underneath the bow. I got it placed on the other side as well, and I did both cans the same way. I placed those lids back on, and y'all, our cute little canister set is complete. I love how the pure cane sugar label paired so well with the coffee label. And y'all, what goes perfectly with coffee? Yes, you guessed it. Faux apple cinnamon donuts. Look how cute all of this looks together. I just love it, and I hope you do too. Let's get to making those faux apple cinnamon donuts. I shared a tutorial a few weeks ago, but just in case anybody missed it or you're new here, I'm going to share that again. I already have flour and salt mixed up in my bowl. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of salt. We're also going to need some ground cinnamon as well as apple pie spice. You can go ahead and add some of that to your mixture here if you would like. Next, add water. I like to start with a 1/2 cup. You can always add more if your dough is still too dry. Start mixing that together really well. And then I like to go ahead and dump my dough out on my counter. And you can begin kneading that dough just as if it were real, and you want a Play-Doh-like consistency. I grab a piece of that dough and begin rolling it into my hands into a ball shape. And you can add or take away dough depending on the size of the donut that you're going for. I'm going for the mini-sized donuts for this project. Next, kind of take your fingers and go around those edges as well as the top, giving it a flatter shape on the top and the bottom. You're going to need something to punch that hole through your donut. I grabbed this medicine syringe that I had in my cabinet, and I used the little side just to punch through on one side. Then I flipped it over, punched it through again, and took my pinky finger and just rubbed on the inside of that donut. You can also wet your finger a little bit to help shape your dough as well as get rid of any creases in your donuts. I do like a few creases in the donuts as it gives it a more realistic look. We'll go through that process one more time, making our donut. Just make that rounded shape in your hand. You want to punch out that hole on one side, then flip it over and do the other side, rolling it around in the palm of your hand, shaping that donut. You can also go ahead and preheat that oven for 175 because we are going to bake these for 2 hours. I like to check on them each hour, and then after the 2-hour mark, I'll cut my oven off and then just leave them in there with the heat that's left inside. Now our donuts are baked and cooled, and we are ready for the next step. I have some black coffee here in my cup. It also has some of that apple pie spice and ground cinnamon mixed in. You want to grab some Epsom salt as well. Take a plate and mix that salt with your ground cinnamon as well as that apple pie spice. You want to grab a paintbrush and just brush on that black coffee mixture with those spices all over the donuts, and then you can take your salt and spice mixture and sprinkle over that while it's good and wet. For me, it's easier to do the top and the sides, let it dry a little while, then flip it over and do the back, so you're not trying to do the entire donut at the same time and getting fingerprints and knocking off your cinnamon mixture. Complete this process until you get all of your donuts covered. You can take a clear matte sealer and just lightly spray your donuts once they're all complete, just to help hold all of that cinnamon in place. And here they are, all staged up again for you with our cute canister set that we made earlier, as well as a muslin fabric coffee sack that I made and just decoupaged that label on the fabric. I love these apple cinnamon donuts for any season, but especially for fall. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I am so glad you all stopped by to watch. I hope you love all the projects as much as I do. These are just a few of the many projects you could create using items right from your kitchen cabinets. So there may be a part 2 to this video coming later on in the fall season using more kitchen items. I just love to take what I already have, or if it gets old and I don't use it anymore, you can always upcycle it and turn it into beautiful home decor for any season. Don't forget to drop a comment before you leave today. Let me know how you like today's projects. Also, let me know if you've tried anything similar. I love to hear about all of your projects as well. I also have a crafting group page over on Facebook with 3 of my close friends, Emily with Emily's Upcycled Home, Michelle with Michelle's Crafty Crafts, and Cindy with Cindy's Flips to Primitive Crafty Crafts. That group is called Crafting with the Hot Mess Express. We would love to have you over there, and you can share your crafts in that group as well. Once again, I thank you all for being here today. Thank you so much for all of your support for my channel. Don't forget you can find me over on Facebook as well as TikTok. I look forward to chatting with you all in the comments, and I hope you all have a blessed weekend. We have a long Labor Day weekend, so that will be nice. And I look forward to seeing you next week for our new video. Have a blessed week ahead, friends. Bye for now.